Okay, now that the little ball has disappeared off wherever balls go and all that, I finally went and read the manual. I guess there's a lot to be said for reading the manual, but in my own defense, at least I didn't read it until disaster had struck. But after reading the manual, I come to find out there's a set screw on this side right here that'll just push the spring and the ball in, and they go into this little piece right here, which I had turned upside down. That's why the other ball didn't work right. I hope you can see that spot there. So, having gone back to Redneck Supply and got a handful of ball bearings, I've come back and learned that it's really pretty easy to reassemble this thing. And I hope nobody finds out I read the manual or they'll take my redneck away from me. But anyway, I guess there's something to be said for reading the manual. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have been through with this in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'll get all the screws back in the half nut here. And then we'll put the little ball in and the little spring. And everything's going to work right, like it used to back in the 70s when I bought this lathe. I used to do a lot of work with it. I did metallizing on electric motor shafts, and I sleeved the end bells for electric motors so that you could put the bearing back in there tight. And I used to use the lathe to actually as a centers to put the crankshafts for 2-cycle motorcycles in there, so I could rebuild them and true them up really straight. Alright, you notice I dropped the ball in the hole. I dropped a full-length spring in there, and now then I can come along behind that with this set screw and screw him down into here. And then there will be a miracle, whereas that guy will work. He actually holds himself up. Look at that. Isn't that something? Who'd have thought it? Now, I want to take back all the bad things I said about Mr. Craftsman and withdraw the wishes for all the bad things I wished on 7 generations of his family. I'm sure he was just trying to make a good old-fashioned lathe here. And it isn't his fault Rednecks are working on it, you know. In a minute, we'll put this thing right back on the lathe. I'd like to point out that up here, there's a ball bearing and a spring here. Lucky for us, of course, they don't fall out very easy. And when you go to rolling things around, they could fall out in the floor and you'd be in this problem again. And who knows, they might not have the right size ball bearing down at the ace place. So, let me get set up here and we'll put this thing back on the lathe. Okay, so now it's time to try to reassemble everything. Now that we've got some hope that things are going to work right, I'll pull this little guy around here. We'll grab the lead screw and try to feed him down through here. They're opened up here. And down through the middle with all the lead screw. There's a little notch in this thing, a keyway, that's got to be lined up at this other end, and that would be a good thing for people to remember. I'm going to go ahead and hang this thing on here before I finish all the other stuff with the lead screw. I can get it lined up. There's little dowel pins to hold everything together. It's been my experience, they pop out just about every time that I work on this. You want to put it back down through the bed so the apron is actually lined up correctly, which is what I try to do. I tap the little burgers back in there. Lead screw. Try to put him back where he goes. Maybe. It's not working really easy yet. Get this screw back in. It'll be easier to line up the lead screw once this is lined up and not putting weight on it. Okay, gotta roll it over. So, the nut right here is holding me tight. There we go. Just cranking around until he fits. There we are. Take that out of here. And the lead screw is in there. I'm sure there's a better way to do this. I just don't happen to know it. Besides, if I didn't make mistakes, you would know what not to do. So, we've got that in there. Move the carriage back a little bit. Find our bearings. Here's this little fella right here. And the bearings that go with him. Slide them all on the end of the lead screw. Okay. Just a matter of finding where these go in here. And this one. And then I'm going to go ahead and tighten these little fellas down. I think they're about as straight. Everything's about as straight as it's going to get right here. There, it's in gear, that ought to hold it straight. All right. These screws are nice and tight. Now we need to go back on with the bearings. There's a bearing race already on there. We're stuck to the side of that support. Put the bearings, and we put the nut back on it. This nut's got a lot of resistance on the end of the screw here, so that it won't try to unscrew while the machine's running. One of the things you have to do is to lock this screw so it doesn't turn when you're trying to put it back on. Get my multi-purpose super auto adjustable wrench and tighten this guy down. I try to tighten it just up to the point where I've taken the slack out, but it's not really putting any pressure on the bearings to speak of. And it's relatively easy to feel that. I need John here to say something about that. Something in his British accent. It would sound a lot better than what I started to say. Let's see here. All right, that's tight, no slack, and it's not so tight it'll knock the bearings out. Now then, all we have to do to find out if that's any good, turn on the lathe, put the lead screw in here, drop the half nuts, there it goes. So that works. And when I pull it up, get a nice click and it stays there. So I would guess this repair was successfully done. Now then it's on to working on the quick way boring machine, which maybe I'll put that in another video, I don't know. So I have a hard time getting up the ambition to finish the job.